You know what gets me every single July? That moment when you walk out to your garden with a cup of coffee, feeling pretty good about life, and then you see it. Your tomato leaves chewed to lace, a line of aphids crawling up your pepper stems like they own the place. That squash plant you babied from seed for 6 weeks, something got to it overnight. Stem severed clean at the soil line. Gone. And you do what I did for 30 years. You grab a bottle off the shelf, spray everything down, and hope for the best. Maybe it works for a week, maybe 2, but the pests come back. They always come back. And every season, it feels like you're fighting the same war with the same weapons, and somehow losing ground. I want you to hold that picture in your mind. Your garden, your frustration, your shelf full of sprays that never quite deliver. Because what I'm about to show you is going to change the way you think about every single one of those problems. And it comes from people who solved them 300 years ago. A few years back, I was visiting Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Rolling green hills, white farmhouses, horse-drawn buggies on the road. And I got to spend time around Amish gardens. Now these folks have been growing food on that same land since the 1720s. That's over 300 years of continuous farming. 300 years without a single bottle of synthetic pesticide. Not one. And their plants looked better than mine. Healthier, fuller, less damage. I stood there looking at rows of tomatoes with barely a nibble on them, and I thought, what do they know that I missed for 3 decades? That question sent me down a path that changed everything about the way I garden. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I found. Stay with me all the way through, because I'm going to share 6 Amish techniques that replaced every spray bottle I ever owned. The specific companion planting combinations that create what scientists call olfactory confusion, a system so effective that pests literally cannot find your tomatoes even when they're 3 feet away. And a dead simple trick for protecting young transplants that I've never seen in any gardening book. 1 piece of cardboard, 10 seconds of work, and it solved a problem that cost me dozens of seedlings every single spring. Let me start with the foundation, and I mean that literally, because the first thing Amish gardeners taught me is that pest control doesn't start on the leaves. It starts underground, in the soil. This is where most of us get it backwards. We see a bug eating our plants, and we treat the plant. We spray the leaves, we dust the stems, we set traps around the base. But the Amish approach says something different. It says if your soil is right, your plants will be strong enough to handle moderate pest pressure on their own. No spray required. And here's the science behind it. Healthy soil, soil that's rich in organic matter and teeming with microbial life, produces plants with stronger cell walls and higher concentrations of natural defensive compounds. These aren't vague claims. Research out of Penn State University and Cornell has demonstrated that plants grown in biologically active, compost-amended soil are measurably more resistant to both pest damage and disease. The cell walls are literally thicker. The chemical defenses are literally stronger. It's not folklore. It's plant chemistry, verified in laboratories and published in peer-reviewed journals. So here's what to do. Every spring, before you plant anything, spread 2 to 3 inches of well-aged compost across your garden beds and work it into the top 4 to 6 inches of soil. If you can get compost that includes aged manure, even better. The Amish use a lot of horse and cow manure composted over winter. They let it age at least 6 months, sometimes a full year, until it's dark, crumbly, and smells like earth, not like a barn. That combination of decomposed plant matter and animal waste creates an incredibly diverse soil microbiome, billions of bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms working together to make nutrients available to your plants in forms they can actually absorb. Now here's the part most people miss. You can't do this once and expect miracles. The Amish build their soil every single year. Season after season, generation after generation, the same beds get amended, get richer, get more alive. After 2 or 3 years of consistent annual compost additions, you'll notice something remarkable. Your plants will be visibly more vigorous, thicker stems, darker green leaves, and you'll see less pest damage overall. Not zero damage. Nature doesn't work that way. Nothing eliminates every bug, but noticeably, meaningfully less. I started doing this about 4 years ago, and the difference in my tomato and pepper plants alone was worth every wheelbarrow load. They're sturdier, they recover faster from minor feeding, and they produce more fruit on top of it. If you're gardening in zones 3 through 5 where your growing season is shorter, get your compost down as early as the ground is workable in spring. Ideally 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost date, so the soil biology has time to wake up before you transplant. In warmer zones, 7 through 9, you can add compost in late winter and get an even earlier start. The bottom line is this: strong soil grows strong plants, and strong plants don't need a chemical bodyguard. But even the strongest plant can use some allies, and this is where the Amish approach gets truly clever. This next technique is the one that surprised me the most because it looks so different from how most American gardens are laid out. Most of us plant in neat, single-crop rows. Tomatoes here, beans over there, squash way down at the end. It looks organized. It makes harvesting easy. But to a pest, a long row of nothing but one crop is an all-you-can-eat buffet with a neon sign pointing the way. Amish gardeners mix things up on purpose. They interplant aromatic herbs and flowers directly among their vegetables. And the reason is so elegant it almost makes you laugh once you understand it. Most garden pests find their target plants by smell. Aphids, cabbage moths, tomato hornworms, cucumber beetles. They all navigate by following the chemical signals that their host plants release into the air. When you surround those host plants with strong-smelling companions, you create what entomologists call olfactory confusion. The pest literally cannot locate your tomatoes because the basil, the marigolds, and the dill are drowning out the signal. It's like trying to find someone by their perfume in a room full of competing scents. Except in this case, the pest gives up and moves on. Here's exactly how to set this up, and I want to be specific because vague advice helps nobody. For every 3 to 4 tomato plants, tuck in 1 basil plant, about 8 to 10 inches from the base of each tomato. Basil repels aphids, whiteflies, and tomato hornworms. And as a bonus, many experienced gardeners report that basil planted near tomatoes actually improves the flavor of the fruit. The Amish have been growing these two side by side for as long as anyone can remember. Between your rows of cabbage, broccoli, or kale, plant dill or cilantro every 12 to 14 inches. These herbs repel cabbage moths and imported cabbage worms. But here's the double benefit that makes this so brilliant. When the dill and cilantro flower, they attract parasitic wasps and hoverflies, which are voracious predators of aphids and caterpillars. So you're repelling one set of pests while recruiting their natural enemies at the same time. That's the kind of two-for-one efficiency the Amish have built into their gardens for generations. Around the borders of your beds, plant French marigolds. Not the big, poofy African marigolds, but the smaller, more pungent French varieties. Space them about 10 to 12 inches apart. And here's why this matters so much. Marigold roots release a compound called alpha-terthianol into the soil. That compound suppresses root knot nematodes, microscopic worms that destroy root systems from below where you can't even see the damage happening. Meanwhile, above ground, the strong marigold scent deters whiteflies and squash bugs. This isn't just Amish tradition. The nematode-suppressing effect of French marigolds has been confirmed by research at multiple agricultural universities, including Rutgers and the University of Florida. If you're in a hotter climate, zones 8 or 9, swap cilantro for summer savory, since cilantro bolts fast in the heat. And add some nasturtiums along the edges too, because they serve double duty in a way I'll get to shortly. Now, this third principle is the one that took me the longest to really internalize, because it goes against everything we've been conditioned to think about insects. For most of my gardening life, my goal was simple: kill the bugs, all the bugs. Any bug on my plants was a problem to be eliminated. And that mindset, I now realize, was costing me the very allies I needed most. The Amish don't think about insects that way. They've always understood that a healthy garden isn't one with no insects. It's one with the right insects. A garden where predator and prey exist in a balance that keeps damage manageable without any human intervention at all. Let me give you some numbers that changed my perspective entirely. A single ladybug can eat up to 50 aphids in a single day. One lacewing larva, those tiny pale green insects with the delicate wings, can consume 200 aphids during its short larval stage. Parasitic wasps, which are so small you might not even notice them, lay their eggs inside hornworms and cabbage worms. The wasp larvae eat the pest from the inside out. It sounds gruesome, but it's incredibly effective pest control, happening for free, 24 hours a day, without you lifting a finger. Ground beetles patrol the soil surface at night, eating slugs, cutworms, and grubs. These are your allies. These are the soldiers that are already enlisted in your cause. And when you spray a pesticide, even an organic one, you're killing them right alongside the pests. The Amish figured this out through centuries of observation, and modern entomology has confirmed it. Kill the predators, and the pest population bounces back faster and harder because there's nothing left to keep it in check. So how do you attract and keep these beneficial insects? You build them a habitat. The simplest way is to create what's called an insectary strip. This is a section of your garden, even just a row 2 feet wide along one edge, planted with flowers and herbs that beneficial insects need for nectar and pollen. The best plants for this are sweet alyssum, yarrow, fennel, dill, and Queen Anne's lace. Plant them in a dense strip and let them flower all season long. The key is continuous bloom. You need something flowering from early spring through fall, so the beneficials always have a food source, even when pest populations are temporarily low. Here's the practical setup. Along one border of your garden, plant a row of sweet alyssum at the front. It stays low, maybe 4 inches tall, and it blooms from spring to frost without stopping. Behind it, alternate yarrow and dill plants about 10 to 12 inches apart. If you have room, add a few fennel plants at the back for height and variety. Within a few weeks of the first blooms, this strip will be buzzing with hoverflies, parasitic wasps, lacewings, and ladybugs. Once those populations get established, they patrol your entire garden. They don't stay in the insectary strip. They use it as a home base and hunt everywhere. The Amish also leave small areas of their property a little wild on purpose. A patch of clover near the garden, an unmowed strip along the fence, a pile of stones or old logs where ground beetles can shelter during the day before coming out to hunt at night. These aren't signs of neglect or laziness. They're habitat. Every beneficial insect needs somewhere to live, breed, and overwinter. If your garden is perfectly manicured with bare soil between every row, you've essentially hung a no vacancy sign for the very creatures you want most. One honest note here. If you're gardening in zones 4 through 6, where winters are harsh, beneficial insect populations can take longer to build up in spring. You might consider purchasing a release of ladybugs or lacewing eggs early in the season to jumpstart things. But here's the critical part. Make sure you have the flowering habitat in place first, or they'll simply fly away. That was a mistake I made my first year. I bought a bag of 1,500 ladybugs, released them into my garden at dusk like the instructions said, and by the next morning, they were gone. Every single one. Because I hadn't given them any reason to stay. No food source, no shelter, no habitat. Once I built the insectary strip and left a few wild patches, the ladybugs I released the following year stayed. And they multiplied. But that's not enough either. And this is where we get to the most important habit of all. The one technique that the Amish practice every single day without exception. It's not glamorous, it's not complicated, it won't make headlines or go viral on social media. But it might be the single most effective pest control method that exists. The morning walk. Every Amish gardener I spoke with in Lancaster County talks about this the same way. It's just part of the day, like breakfast, like feeding the animals. You go out first thing, 15 to 20 minutes, and you walk every row. You're not admiring your tomatoes, you're looking closely. You're turning over leaves, you're checking the undersides of squash foliage. You're running your eyes along every stem. And when you find a pest, you pick it off by hand and drop it into a small bucket of soapy water. I know how that sounds. Picking bugs off by hand? In the 21st century? We've got drones and gene editing and artificial intelligence, and the best pest control method is a bucket of soapy water? But here's why it works so well that nothing else comes close. Most serious pest damage doesn't happen because of 1 or 2 bugs. It happens because a small population was allowed to grow unchecked for a week or 2. A single tomato hornworm can strip an entire branch bare in 48 hours. A pair of squash bugs can lay hundreds of eggs on the undersides of leaves in a week. By the time the damage is visible enough to notice from a distance, by the time you think, I should probably spray something, you're already 2 weeks behind. The morning walk catches problems when they're still small. 2 hornworms on Monday become 0 hornworms on Monday, instead of 20 hornworms by Friday. Here's how to do it effectively. Bring a small bucket filled halfway with water and a squirt of dish soap. The soap breaks the surface tension, so the bugs sink and drown instead of climbing out. Start at one end and work through every row. For tomatoes, look for hornworms on the top leaves and along the stems. They're big, 3 to 4 inches long, but they camouflage incredibly well against the green foliage. Look for their dark droppings on the leaves below as a giveaway. You'll often spot the droppings before you spot the worm. For squash and cucumbers, flip the leaves and look for clusters of small, bronze-colored eggs on the undersides. Those are squash bug eggs, and scraping them off with your thumbnail right now saves you a real nightmare 2 weeks from now. For brassicas, cabbage, broccoli, kale, look for small green caterpillars and the white butterflies hovering around your plants. Those butterflies aren't admiring your garden. They're laying eggs. After doing this for a couple of seasons, I can tell you it becomes second nature. I actually enjoy it now. It's quiet time in the garden before the phone starts ringing and the day gets going. You notice things you'd never catch from a distance. You develop an eye for what's normal and what isn't. And you stay connected to the rhythms of your garden in a way that makes you a better gardener across the board. One practical note: if you're gardening on a larger scale, say a 1/4 acre or more, the morning walk takes longer, and you may not catch everything by hand. The Amish who farm larger plots often use lightweight floating row covers over their brassicas and young squash plants as a physical barrier against egg-laying moths and beetles. You can buy row cover fabric at most garden centers. It's translucent, it lets light and water through, and it physically prevents pests from reaching your plants. Just make sure to remove it once squash and cucumber plants begin to flower, so pollinators can reach the blossoms. Now we get to my favorite technique, the one that makes you smile when you understand the logic behind it. Instead of trying to keep every pest out of your garden, what if you invited them in on purpose, but sent them to the wrong address? That's trap cropping, and it's pure Amish ingenuity. The concept is simple. You plant something the pest loves even more than your main crop, and you plant it at the edges, where it intercepts them before they ever reach your vegetables. Nasturtiums are the classic Amish trap crop. Aphids are wildly attracted to nasturtiums, far more than they are to your beans or peppers. Plant nasturtiums in a ring around the outside of your garden, or at the ends of your rows, about 6 to 8 inches apart. The aphids will swarm the nasturtiums and largely leave your main crops alone. Once the nasturtiums are loaded with aphids, you have 2 choices. You can pull the plants and dispose of them, or, better yet, leave them alone and let the ladybugs and lacewings from your insectary strip come feast. That's the whole system working together. The trap crop concentrates the pests. The beneficial insects concentrate on the trap crop. Your vegetables sit in the middle, undisturbed. For flea beetles, which are an absolute nightmare on eggplant and young brassicas, plant a row of radishes as a trap crop, about 2 feet in front of your main planting. Flea beetles prefer radish leaves. They'll congregate there first, chewing little holes in the radish foliage, while your eggplants stay clean. Sacrifice the radish tops. They were never the point. Blue Hubbard squash is another traditional trap crop that Amish and old New England gardeners have used for generations. If you grow any kind of summer squash, zucchini, or pumpkins, planting a couple of Blue Hubbard squash plants at the far corners of your garden will draw squash vine borers and cucumber beetles away from your main crop. They're absolute magnets for those specific pests. You're not trying to save the Blue Hubbard. You're using it as a decoy so your zucchini survives. The beauty of trap cropping is that it requires no sprays, no products, and no daily labor beyond what you're already doing. You plant it once at the beginning of the season, and it works passively for months. The pests do exactly what nature designed them to do. They just do it somewhere you don't mind. Now, this last technique is the only one that involves making something, And even then, it takes about 10 minutes and uses ingredients you already have in your kitchen. For those times when pest pressure is heavier than usual, when maybe you had a wet spring and the slug population exploded, or when aphids hit a particular plant harder than the system can handle, the Amish rely on a simple homemade spray. Not a pesticide, a deterrent. There's an important difference. Here's the recipe I learned from an Amish family in Lancaster County. Take 4 to 5 cloves of garlic, 2 hot peppers. Cayenne works well, but whatever you have is fine. Chop them up, add them to 1 quart of warm water, and let the mixture steep overnight, at least 12 hours. The next morning, strain it through cheesecloth or a fine mesh strainer into a spray bottle. Add 1 teaspoon of plain liquid dish soap, not detergent, just simple dish soap. The soap helps the spray stick to the leaves and also breaks down the waxy coating on soft-bodied insects like aphids. Spray this directly on affected plants, focusing on the undersides of leaves where most pests hide. Apply in the early morning or late evening, never in direct midday sun, because the soap can cause minor leaf burn in intense heat. 1 application usually keeps pests at bay for 5 to 7 days. Reapply after heavy rain. Now let me be straight with you about what this spray does and doesn't do. It does not kill pests on contact the way a synthetic pesticide does. It deters them. It makes your plants smell and taste so unpleasant that the insects move on to find something else. Combined with all the other steps we've covered, the healthy soil, the companion planting, the beneficial insects, the morning walks, the trap crops, that deterrent effect is usually more than enough. But if you're expecting 1 spray to wipe out an entire infestation overnight, that's not what this is. This is 1 piece of a system, and it's the system that works, not any single piece by itself. There's a word the Amish use that ties all of this together: Gelassenheit. It's an old German word that doesn't translate cleanly into English, but the closest meaning is something like yielding to the natural order, surrendering the need to control everything, trusting that the system, the creation, has a balance built into it, and your job isn't to override that balance, but to work within it. When you spray a pesticide, you're overriding the system. You're killing the pests, sure, but you're also killing the ladybugs, the lacewings, the parasitic wasps, the ground beetles, all the creatures that were already working to manage those pests for free, around the clock, without you paying a cent. The Amish figured out through generations of patient observation what modern soil science and entomology are now confirming in laboratories. If you build a garden that supports the whole system, the system manages itself. You don't have to fight nature when you let nature fight for you. And that brings me to the technique I promised you at the beginning, the one I have never seen in any gardening book or magazine: the Amish transplant trick. When Amish families put their young seedlings into the garden each spring, they do something that takes about 10 seconds per plant. They place a collar around the base of each seedling. Not a plastic collar, not a store-bought product, a section of cardboard tube, a toilet paper roll, a paper towel roll cut into 3-inch sections. That's it. They push it about 1 inch into the soil and leave about 2 inches rising above the surface. This cardboard collar does 2 things. First, it creates a physical barrier against cutworms. Cutworms are the larvae of several moth species, and they're responsible for more dead seedlings than most gardeners realize. They crawl along the soil surface at night and chew right through the stems of young transplants at ground level. 1 cutworm can kill 3 or 4 seedlings in a single night. They don't eat the plant, they just sever the stem and move on. The cardboard collar stops them. They can't climb it, they can't chew through it fast enough to bother, so they move on to find something easier. Second, and this is the elegant part, the cardboard decomposes naturally over 4 to 6 weeks. Right around the time the plant's stem has hardened enough, what gardeners call becoming woody, that cutworms can no longer bite through it. So the protection lasts exactly as long as the plant needs it, and then disappears on its own. No plastic waste, no products to buy, no removal required. Just a piece of cardboard and the understanding that protecting a young plant through its most vulnerable window is all you really need to do. I started using these collars 3 seasons ago. Before that, I was losing anywhere from 5 to 8 transplants every spring to cutworm damage, sometimes more. I'd come out in the morning, find a beautiful pepper seedling lying flat on the ground, stem slashed clean like someone took scissors to it, and there was nothing I could do. It was already dead. Since I started using the cardboard collars, I've lost almost none. 1 seedling in 3 years. 1. And I'm not certain that was even a cutworm. It's the kind of quiet, practical wisdom that doesn't make headlines, doesn't trend on the internet, doesn't sell products. But it saves your garden 1 seedling at a time. Let me step back now and talk about something honest, something I think matters if any of this is going to stick. The Amish approach isn't a magic bullet. It's not a quick fix. If your garden is currently overrun with pests and you're used to reaching for a spray bottle, switching to this system cold turkey in mid-July is going to feel like it's not working. Because it takes time. The soil improvements take 2 to 3 years of consistent compost to really show dramatic results. The beneficial insect populations take a full season to establish if you're starting from scratch. The companion planting needs to be in place before the pests arrive, not after. This is a system you build once and maintain, and then it works year after year, getting better each season as the soil deepens, as the beneficial populations grow, as the habitat matures. The Amish didn't develop this overnight either. This is 3 centuries of observation, adjustment, and patience. But once it's in place, once everything is working together, the amount of effort drops dramatically. You're not fighting your garden anymore. You're walking through it with a cup of coffee, picking off the occasional hornworm, and watching the ladybugs do the rest. I want to be clear about something else, too. I'm not anti-science. I'm not against modern agriculture or research. In fact, it's modern research that has validated everything the Amish have been doing. Penn State confirmed the soil science. Cornell validated companion planting. Rutgers proved the marigold nematode suppression. Entomologists at universities across the country have documented exactly how beneficial insect predation works. The Amish got there first through observation and patience. Science got there second through controlled experiments. They arrived at the same place. That should tell you something. Here's what changed for me, and I think it might change for you too. For 30 years, I thought about pest control as a battle, me versus the bugs, and I was always looking for a better weapon, a stronger spray, a more effective powder, a new product that promised to finally solve the problem. But the problem was never the bugs. The problem was me. I was trying to override a system instead of participating in it. The Amish word for it is Gelassenheit. The scientific word for it is integrated pest management. The gardening word for it is common sense. Whatever you call it, it works. Build your soil every year. Plant companions that confuse pests and attract allies. Create habitat for the insects that do the heavy lifting for free. Walk your garden every morning and catch problems while they're still small enough to fit in a soapy bucket. Use trap crops to redirect pests to addresses you don't care about. And when you need a little extra help, mix up a simple garlic pepper spray that deters without destroying. 6 steps. No products to buy. No chemicals to store. No war to fight. Just a garden that works the way gardens have worked for 300 years in the rolling hills of Lancaster County. And a cardboard tube that saves your seedlings while you sleep. That's it. That's the whole system. Now go build some soil and let the ladybugs handle the rest.